As Quint planeswalked into the sun-dappled leaves, heat and humidity slapped him in the face. He inhaled the sweet scent of bell-shaped flowers, their vines twining around trees. The Loxodon student was far from his home at Strixhaven, the premier school of magic on the plane of Arcavios. The traumatic events of New Phyrexia's invasion had ignited his spark, and now he explores a plane entirely new to him. He walks into a cloud of bugs, spitting and waving his trunk around, and trips on a rock. Quint was only glad that no one was around to see him fall to his knees. Then, he looks up to find himself dangerously close to a full mouth of pointy teeth. They belonged to a creature whose talons were so sharp they carved grooves into the ground. It stood upright on two legs, covered in bright feathers. Quint's heart sped in both fear and wonder, but mostly fear. This was, presumably, one of the infamous dinosaurs of Ixalan. Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Aether Hub. I'm Simon, bringing you more Magic the Gathering lore. Today marks the beginning of a new lore season, as we eagerly expect the release of Lost Caverns of Ixalan. We return to the plane that gave us the Immortal Sun, a stranded Azor, and the budding love story between Vraska and Jace Beleren. For most players, Ixalan is remembered as a Typing's Matter expansion, and that again returns with Lost Caverns. We witnessed the likes of vampires, merfolk, dinosaur tamers, and pirates rushing to obtain the secrets of the Golden City on our last adventure here. Now, the mysteries of Ixalan are contained in its unexplored depths. What's waiting for them in the dark places of this plane, and how does it further the Magic the Gathering story? Let's find out with Chapter 1, written by Valerie Valdez. And remember, if you're enjoying the content here, guys, don't forget to leave this video a like, become a subscriber, and share it with friends. Now let's get into the lore. The dinosaur leapt toward him, making a sound between a screech and a growl. Quint dodged sideways, only to land in front of another dinosaur. He realized they were smart enough to flank. While impressive for animals, it was pretty bad for him. A third, larger creature joined them as they began to circle, watching every twitch Quint made. He started to trace a sigil in the air, thinking he could use his magic to hit them with branches or make them run into each other. Before he could complete his spell, the dinosaurs froze, staring as someone emerged from a crumbling stone structure. It was a girl no older than late teens or early 20s, with tan skin and dark hair pulled back from her face. She wore bracers on her muscular arms and had a sword tucked into her belt, suggesting she was a warrior. The woman called to one of the dinosaurs, and the creature, named Putlaza, trotted to her side. She flicked her hand to dismiss the others like they were trained pets, and just like that, they disappeared into the jungle. The girl turned to him, a metal disc covering her face like an eye patch. She asked if he was Quintarius Khand. He admitted that, yes, he was, and the girl introduced herself as Wata, saying her warrior poet told her to expect his arrival. Quint fanned his face with his ears. Ixalan was like a sauna. When Saheeli told him about the plane, she only ever described the golden city of Orazca. Wada led him toward the city through a gap in the trees, and as he stepped out of the foliage, he was blinded by its glittering brilliance in the valley below. Burnished roads stretched into the distance, spires reached into the blue sky, and an enormous temple rose from the center like a gleaming mountain. They hiked down the hillside and through the towering gates to the city, into the bustle of people, carts, and dinosaurs. The Central Avenue market was overflowing with goods, from spiny pink fruits to beautifully crafted jewelry, all watched over by guards wearing helmets adorned with wing-like crests, and carrying spears decorated with bright orange feathers. Orazca seemed prosperous, if not for a few gouted and falling buildings, remnants of the recent war with New Phyrexia. Wada led Quint to the palace entrance and looked upon the walls, decorated in faded red and white paint. There, he saw a depiction of a sphinx giving something to a smaller figure, or perhaps receiving a gift. The guard led them not inside the giant pyramid, but around it, to a plain building marred by magic. The door is full of acid-eaten holes, and the walls are gruesome outlines of presumably deceased humans that once stood here. Wada gestured to Quint to step inside ahead of her, and he entered a room with descending stairs. Voices drifted up from below. At the end of the stairs was a much larger room covered in murals, one of warriors worshipping a figure with a sun glyph behind her head, another of warriors fighting an impossibly large bipedal creature. On the floor was a series of copper tablets inlaid with gems, and a door made of gold, silver, and copper, with all codes that suggested the tablets had to be set inside of them. Two women were there, Saheeli, who he was familiar with, wearing a deep red dress and elaborate gold jewelry, and who he could only guess was her partner, Huatli, Ixalan's warrior poet. Wada's dinosaur ran over and knocked Huatli down like an eager puppy greeting a friend, and Saheeli rushed over to greet Quint. Quint had come here tracking something he called the Coin Empire, which wasn't actually their true name, only something he called them. Being a student of the Lorehold College at Strixhaven, Quint knew how to summon long-dead spirits to uncover the mysteries of the past. One such spirit had sent him searching for this Coin Empire, and Saheeli had thought he might find some clues here on Ixalan. The women were examining the tablets, trying to figure out how to open the door. The glyphs formed a poem, and the parts Huatli translated said they would find the birthplace of humanity and home of the gods somewhere beyond this door. A man came down the stairs, and Huatli introduced her cousin, Inti, Seneschal of the Sun, dinosaur rider, and hero of the war against New Phyrexia. But Quint was distracted by a coin in one of the tablets. It looked exactly like the one from his Coin Empire. Inti came back to check on them, asking if they had found anything about magic or weapons that they could use against the Dusk Legion. The Dusk Legion, governed by vampire conquistadors, had been the Sun Empire's enemy before the invasion of New Phyrexia, and it seemed now that the War of the Multiverse was over, Ixalan had gone back to its more traditional squabbling. The Emperor wanted to break the door down, but Huatli knew that wouldn't work, so Saheeli kept him distracted with her creations. She had made fire-breathing dinosaur construct that kept his interest, but also kept Huatli and the other warriors safe when it seemed like they were devoted to finding life-threatening danger. Saheeli thought she'd better get back to her workshop, and Quint sat down in front of the tablet with Huatli, ready to work on a translation. Huatli stretched and glanced at Quint taking notes. They had finished the translation. It read, "We are the Koman of the fifth people, sticks and spades of the good place granted to us by the deep gods, exiled to the surface by our failures. We defeated the great betrayer. We fought the traitors, invaders, and prisoners of Chamil, the riven star, the glory of her threefold light hidden. The age of the sun ended in darkness for 16 full counts of her turning, until the 1,000 moons shattered the circling shell of her prison. We leave this memory and key and map, so the seeds of our fruit may spread through the winding ways of Topizielo to Matsalantli, golden door of the gods, and find the lost roots of our tree." By Huatli's counts, if their system was similar to the Sun Empire, that meant 320 years of darkness. It might be heretical to assume their god, Chamil, was the same as the Sun Empire's deity, the threefold sun. Quint assured her the mysteries of the plains were never ending, and new discoveries often rewrite old histories. Huatli didn't think the poem meant the door they were trying to open. There must still be another far beyond it, if winding ways are any indication. Then Huatli found them. The tablets containing the poem had been embedded in the door itself, and she quickly discovered they were removable. Behind the tablets were faint glyphs, a single word, one per tablet. Huatli examined the door's glyphs again. Warrior, leaf, farmer, shadow. She had an idea and grabbed the tablet that read, "We fought the betrayers, traitors," and slid it into the hole with the symbol reading warrior. Then she put the tablet that read, "Lost branches of our tree," into the hole with the leaf symbol, "Sticks and spades of the good place" to the farmer symbol, and "The age of the sun ended in darkness" to the shadow symbol. A whisper of magic touched her fingers as she slotted the last tablet into the door. The door began to glow, and with a deep bass note, it opened. She gripped the edge and pulled, dragging it across the floor, releasing the stale air inside. Beyond, they saw a sloping tunnel, cold, dry, and dusty, broad enough for the smaller packed dinosaurs to fit through. Whatley leads the descent, followed by Quint, Wata with a torch and another warrior in the back. At the bottom of the tunnel, there was a large room big enough to fit a pyramid inside. In front of the tunnel entrance, a row of corpses crouched on the ground. They were wrapped in linen, strands of beads hung from their necks, strips of bark tucked into the bands wound around their eyes. They had weapons resting near their skeletal hands, but their armor was different than what Whatley and Wata wore, and their bones glowed a faint pinkish purple that pulsed with magic. Across the room, there were remains of an enormous creature, its horns brushing the ceiling. Rust-colored, cage-like armor encased its body. Dozens of spears bristled from the gaps, piercing its gray skin. Its hands were the size of a human, ending in curved talons. This was bigger than almost any dinosaur Whatley had ever seen. Zakama, the elder dinosaur and embodiment of the threefold sun, being the only exception. It was safe to assume it killed the warriors, but no normal beast would be wearing this sort of armor. She sent a guard to deliver a message to Inti and the Imperial Champion, Caparochi, ordering them to ready the dinosaurs for an exploration beyond the door. The guard moved with haste. Whatley followed more slowly, leaving Quint and Wata to inspect the remains. She hoped she would find a path to peace for her people down here, but maybe this scene of a long ago battle meant they were doomed from the start. Saheeli was waiting to embrace her when she emerged from the door, and listened to Whatley's explanation of the death and darkness she found beyond. The two walked wordlessly on the sunlit streets, hands entwined, savoring their love for each other before Whatley must depart. In the jungle outside of Sunray Bay, Malcolm, a siren pirate of the Brazen Coalition, inspected a body slumped in the leaves. The man in charge of the scene asked if it was one of Malcolm's people, but it was hard to tell. The body's face was obscured in mushrooms like red sores, erupting from its mouth and eye sockets. Black veins traced the pallid skin. More fungi bloomed along the neck and arms. A local had reported this person alive only a few hours earlier, but the body seemed to be deteriorating quickly. Malcolm was handed a note found with the body, and he guessed this was Lank, a miner from downtown. The note read, "Downtown under attack, send help, signed Xavier Sal," in a rushed splatter of ink. Deliveries from this mine had slowed, then stopped a few days earlier, bringing the Brazen Coalition and the rest of Sunray Bay's economy to a grinding halt. Malcolm was downtown's official emissary, so he was ordered to come investigate. This looked like some sort of foul magic to him. The dinosaur-riding humans of the Sun Empire considered the Brazen Coalition invaders. The merfolk River Heralds often raided in retaliation of the earthquakes caused by their mines. But at the same time, they had been quieter of late. Too quiet. The opposing pirates of the Dire Keel fleet might have done this to overtake the Brazen Coalition's territory. It could even be the Dusk Legion vampires trying to gain a foothold. Any one of their rivals would have been happy to cause trouble in downtown, yet none had stepped forward to claim responsibility. Downtown is a mining camp split between an outpost and the surface, along with a village underground in a giant cavern. The mine was ancient, extending down into the rock several levels deep. Catwalks and cranes extended over the void, hydraulic lifts and switchback stairs hugged the walls. Buckets of ore were hauled up into carts, pulled along tracks to refineries where the ore would be chemically and magically converted. Silos were filled with product ready for delivery to the surface. They were usually lit by lamps, both magical and mundane. As far as Malcolm could tell, all the lamps were dim. Downtown seemed empty with the exception of the people he brought from Sunray Bay to investigate. Breeches, the blue-furred goblin, inspected the raw ore sitting in the minecart stopped mid-track. Some barrels were overturned, and in the dormitory, doors were left ajar and food left to rot, indicating they were abandoned in a hurry. The smell of mold permeated everything. The only sign of violence were scorch marks on some of the buildings and a scattering of dropped weapons. Malcolm examined a pickaxe with a strange sticky substance on it. All except for one of the pulley elevators had been pulled up to defend against a siege from below. Malcolm held up his lantern and approached the lift, then realized he was stepping in lines of ichor painted on the ground. He examined them closer. They read, "Down," in thick, blocky letters. The feathers on Malcolm's arms ruffled. He might be walking into a trap, but he had to find out what happened to the town. He had to hold on to hope, however faint, that there were survivors waiting to be rescued. Malcolm sent one of his companions to the surface to report what they found, and one to stay above while they ventured down into the mine with breaches. Amalia is in a vast sea of sand, dotted with stone islands, the far shore obscured in shadow. A voice whispered to her, beckoning her to come to it. Then, Amalia bolted upright in her saddle, opening her eyes to see her commander, Clavileño. He had shaken her awake before she fell from her saddle, but when she thanked him, he only rode away with cold eyes and a scowl that showed his fangs. She wasn't bloodfasting, but kept falling into trances as of late, seeing and hearing things that weren't there. Above her, branches of the jungle trees wove together to form a ceiling of vines and leaves, the air thick with the scent of wet earth. She missed the library of her family's estate, where it was so easy to dream of adventures surrounded by books. It was much harder to savor adventure out here where tiny worms hanging from invisible threads fell into her collar, dinosaurs sprang out from the jungle, and the rain soaked all of her maps each afternoon. After the war, she wanted to do something more worthwhile than poring over dusty tomes. So she took a position as a cartographer for the Queen's Bay Company, mapping the wilds of Ixalan. Some of the soldiers noticed Amalia acting strange, but she couldn't tell anyone about the voice that whispered to her in visions. The expedition was a party of 30, between soldiers, servants, and prisoners seeking penance for their various crimes on the eastern continent of Torazan. Vito Passamonte led the expedition, but he was absorbed in his own thoughts and priorities, reading then rereading a battered book he allowed no one else to see. When a soldier tried to borrow the book, Vito had grabbed him by the throat and pinned him to a tree. Amalia could only guess the two vampires didn't have the same goals, though they shared a common purpose. They were headed to the Temple of Aklazots, in the depths of the continent, a door that supposedly led to a solution to the schisms developing inside the Church of Dusk. Maybe this was the same door from her visions, but she wouldn't know until they got there. She had work to do in the meantime. She turned her attention to her cartomancy, picking her finger with a fang and mixing her blood with ash to fill in the details of their journey on her map. Amalia shivered, hearing the voice calling for her again. She hoped and dreaded she'd soon find out why. The crumbling ruins of the temple were partly reclaimed by the jungle, walls choked by vines, stone floors cracked by roots, the crumbled ceiling pierced by branches. Amelia filled in another part of her map with blood-red ink as soldiers and servants milled around the camp. Vito walked among them, radiating resolve and menace, and a hush fell over the gathering. In one hand he held his lance, in the other gripped the book close to his body. Vito raised his voice so that the vampires could hear, telling them they follow the footsteps of the venerable Tarian. He held up his axe, that which belonged to Tarian, and the book that was his journal. It was a recording of his travels with Saint Elenda, as well as their revelations repressed by the church, recently recovered by true believers. The journal said that inside this temple there is a door that leads to the resting place of their god and sire, Aklazots, creator of the first vampires. Though he slumbers, he can be reawakened by his most faithful servants. And if he is returned to Torazan, he could heal the faithful and bring peace to the land. He would heal the schism inside the Blood Empire, and they would once and for all be free to spread their teachings to this savage continent. Amalia shivered, despite the suffocating heat, looking around to see if others were as uneasy as she was. They all hid their feelings well as Vito gestured them onward, leading the way into the temple. The vampires followed, carrying lanterns and floating candles, emerging to find a deep deposit with a wet staircase carved into the rock beside it. At the bottom of the stairs, they found a doorway, leading to a room with recesses filled with moldering piles of bones. The catacomb continued for miles, room after room filled with the remains of the dead. Were they priests? Old sacrifices? She didn't really want to know. At last, they reached a circular room with a grooved obsidian altar in front of a golden door. Amalia was surprised that this was not the door in her vision, but Saint Elenda was said to have emerged from such a door. One of the soldiers, then two more, attempted to open it to no avail. Vito orders Clavileño to bring him one of the human servants, his voice echoing in the empty room. Vito told the shaking porter not to be afraid, as he was led to the altar. Venerable Tarian wrote, "The blood of the lamb shall open the door to paradise." Vito ordered for the porter to be put on the slab, as he was lifted with vampiric strength and laid on the altar. Vito's gaze landed on Amalia, and he ordered her to help hold down the sacrifice. Amalia only cringes, holding an arm up if to shield herself. Bartolome, one of the soldiers who appeared neutral until now, stepped forward to accuse Vito of corrupting their sacred blood rites. Vito argued that the rites of the church are a pale imitation of the true sacraments of their god. He promised they would understand when they unlocked the progenitor's power, and the journal was going to help them. Other soldiers stepped forward to hold the porter down as Vito tucked the journal under his arm and unsheathed his knife. Vito spoke the rites of Alcazatz and cut the victim's throat with a single swipe. The altar blazed to life. Its blackness seemed to be glowing. Blood flowed down the grooves in the obsidian to the floor, and then to the door that glowed with the same darkness. The door opened with a groan. A gust of stagnant air like the breath of some carrion feeder sent the flames in the room guttering wildly. Amalia heard the voice again, wanting her to come forward to it. She tried in vain to convince herself that the voice wasn't stronger than the last time she heard it. And there you guys go, the introductory chapter of Lost Caverns of Ixalan in the books. Let me know what you guys thought of it in the comment section below. Again, I just want to thank the great writers at Wizards of the Coast, especially this author, Valerie Valdez, for all of their hard work in bringing the MTG story to life. Remember, you can support our content here at the Aether Hub by leaving this video a like, becoming a subscriber, or sharing it with friends. It's the absolute best way to help grow this channel and support our work. As always, thank you all so much for watching, and until next time, see ya!